Deborah Wilson is a retired HR manager, meticulous, composed, and quietly resilient. Her daughter Zoe is a college graduate who funded her education by forging her mother's identity to secure federal student loans, then cut her out of the story completely. The story follows Deborah as she uncovers the betrayal, takes back control of her finances and legal power, and reclaims the name her daughter used like a stepping stone. It's a slow-burn revenge of a mother wronged, not with vengeance but with documentation. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. She forgot Mother's Day, but remembered my social security number. By sunset, the table was still set for two. A vase of fresh lilies sat in the center, white and yellow, Zoe's favorite. Deborah had even lit the cinnamon candle Zoe once teased her about, the one that made the house smell like Christmas in May. A lemon tart chilled in the fridge, untouched. And the phone? Quiet. Not a single call, not even a lazy, "love you, Mom" text. Deborah sat by the window, the light dimming around her like closing blinds on a play she hadn't realized was ending. She wasn't new to disappointment. She'd seen Zoe come and go, too busy, too tired, too wrapped up in one new crisis or another. But somehow, she'd thought this year would be different. She stirred her tea. Still hot, still untouched. When the silence became too loud, she reached for her laptop. Not to distract herself, not really, just habit. Deborah had always checked her credit report monthly, a practice left over from her HR days, where she'd coached others on financial hygiene even when hers was barely holding. The login screen welcomed her back like an old friend. "Welcome, Deborah. Last checked, April 10th. Alerts. One new account activity." Her breath caught, not fear, just a flicker of curiosity. She clicked on the alert. New inquiry. Stafford Consolidated Education Loan Lender, Collegia Servicing Group. Amount, $42,107. Opened, May 3rd. Status, active primary borrower, Deborah J. Wilson. Deborah blinked. Then again, she didn't even go to college. She'd worked 2 jobs through her 20s, skipped night school to raise Zoe. She knew her name didn't belong next to any education loan, let alone one opened 10 days ago. She scrolled. The lender was real. The loan was current. The balance was active. And it was listed entirely under her name, no cosigner, no secondary borrower. Her stomach tightened, not with panic but with precision. The same tight, sharp feeling she used to get when someone handed her a falsified resume or skipped protocol. It wasn't the number that made her heart accelerate. It was the signature, the one she never gave. She opened a new tab, typed slowly, Collegia Servicing Group plus reviews plus fraud. Nothing immediate, no red flags. A clean operation, on paper. She stared at the screen. Somewhere behind her, the candle burned low, the scent of cinnamon turning bitter at the edges. Her eyes returned to the amount, $42,107, a sum you could live on for a year or drown in for 10. A ping from her phone. Her heart flipped. Maybe Zoe, finally. But no, it was a reminder from the grocery store app about a sale on dish detergent. Deborah closed it gently. She moved the mouse back over the credit report. Her finger hesitated over the words, expand details. The sun had dipped behind the horizon now. The kitchen was bathed in that bluish half-dark, the kind where light bulbs feel too harsh, but darkness feels like surrender. Outside, a neighbor's wind chime started to sing in the breeze. She took one deep breath. Clicked. The screen blinked. Loading. Then the loan contract appeared. And there it was. Her full name, her address, her social security number, and a signature at the bottom, cursive, almost perfect, but not hers. She used my name like a discount code for a degree I didn't know about. It looked like her signature, looped, steady, practiced, but it wasn't hers. Deborah leaned in closer, adjusting her reading glasses. The glow of the laptop screen reflected in her lenses, casting pale light over her face and the deep, tired lines beneath her eyes. She zoomed in to 200%. The D curved a little too clean. The tail of the W was neat where hers always dragged slightly upward. It was good, convincing even, but she hadn't signed it. and she'd never given anyone permission to do it for her. The document sat there, crisp and cold, like a sealed betrayal. Her name at the top, her social security number, her birthday. Every detail was accurate, except the truth. She scrolled lower, past the declarations and borrower certifications. The signature box glared back at her like an accusation. The timestamp read, May 3rd, 10:41 p.m. She was watching reruns of Murder, She Wrote that night. Alone, knitting half a scarf she hadn't touched since. The digital audit trail showed the IP address, somewhere in California. Deborah lived in Georgia. She pressed a finger against her lips, trying to breathe evenly. Her tea had gone cold on the side table. She pushed it away without looking. Her thoughts raced, not wild but precise. Not panic, assessment. Zoe. Of course it was Zoe. She had access. She'd stayed with her last summer when things got complicated with her roommate. Used Deborah's Wi-Fi, opened her mail, borrowed her laptop more than once, said she needed to fill out paperwork for school stuff. And Deborah hadn't questioned it. Why would she? Zoe was her daughter, her only one. She'd helped her since day one, helped her through the broken lease, the missed rent, the lost job, the second lost job, the night she showed up with a bruised arm and no explanation. And now, this. Deborah sat back in her chair, the screen blurring slightly as heat gathered behind her eyes. She blinked it away. She wouldn't cry. Not tonight. Not for this. Instead, she pulled her notebook from the drawer, black cover, gold coil, and flipped to a fresh page. At the top, she wrote in bold, careful letters, Loan Fraud, May 3rd, Collegia Servicing. She underlined it twice. Below, she listed the red flags. Forged signature IP mismatch 42,107 balance. Opened under her SSN timestamp 10:41 p.m. Not her. She tapped the pen twice, then reached again for the mouse. At the bottom of the page was a small link. Need help? Contact customer support. She hovered over it, paused, clicked. A pop-up opened with the standard corporate language. We're here to assist. Business hours 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. ET. For immediate questions, please call our toll-free number, 1-877-44-50098. She stared at the number, then reached for her phone, hand steady. As she opened the keypad, a photo on her lock screen caught her eye. Zoe, 5 years old, sitting on Deborah's lap, a plastic tiara tilted on her curls, both of them smiling at something off-camera. She didn't delete it. She didn't even look away. She just unlocked the phone and typed in the number. Her thumb hovered over the green call button. Then, with no more hesitation than she'd give boiling a pot of tea, she tapped it. The ringtone began to hum in her ear. 3 beats. Then a mechanical voice. Thank you for calling Collegia Servicing Group. Your call may be monitored or recorded for quality assurance. Please hold for the next available representative. The line clicked. Hold music began. Piano. Soft jazz. Deborah sat back in her chair and closed her eyes. She had just stepped into the system, and this time she wasn't stepping back. The system kept me waiting, so did she. The music on the line was barely music at all, just tinny piano chords dissolving into silence before looping again, like an elevator stuck between floors. Deborah held the phone to her ear with one hand and tapped the pen in her other against her notebook. Tap, tap, tap. 4 beats, then pause. Again. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Her tea had gone cold again, the lilies on the table had begun to droop at the edges, and the lemon tart in the fridge was untouched, same as the night before. She should have been used to waiting. She had waited through tantrums and missed curfews, waited at ERs and financial aid offices, waited for apologies that came too late or not at all. Waiting, when it came to Zoe, was muscle memory. But this was different. This time she wasn't waiting for her daughter to change. She was waiting for someone to verify the damage. Thank you for holding, a young male voice finally said through the static. This is Cody with Collegia Servicing. How can I help you today? Deborah sat up straighter. I'm calling about an account opened under my name. I'd like to verify the details. I believe there may be an issue. Absolutely. Let's get that started, Cody said in a rehearsed but polite tone. Can I have your full name and last 4 digits of your social? She gave them. And the date of birth on file? She gave that too. There was a pause while he typed. All right. I do see a loan opened here, May 3rd, 2 years ago. Current balance is just over $42,000. You're listed as the primary borrower. Looks like fixed interest, federal consolidation, no cosigner. Deborah's heart thumped once, low and hard. She swallowed. Was there an original signature submitted? Yes, ma'am, he said. It was a digital application with e-sign authentication. Would you like me to email you the document? I already have it, Deborah said evenly. I didn't sign it. Silence. Cody cleared his throat. I'm sorry? I didn't open this loan, she repeated. The signature was forged. I can tell you who did it, but first, I need to know what steps I need to take to begin a fraud claim. Cody didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice had dropped half a register, no longer peppy, but procedural. Okay, I understand. In that case, we can initiate what's called an affidavit of identity theft. It's the first step in disputing a loan opened under false pretenses. There will be forms, and you may be asked to file a police report or provide supporting documentation. Deborah reached for her notepad. I'm ready. She wrote the words in all caps. Affidavit, fraud, loan dispute. Cody continued, We'll send the forms to your registered email, and you'll have to complete and return them within 10 business days. Once we receive the affidavit, we pause repayment and flag the account pending review. That includes suspending all credit reporting actions. Deborah nodded to herself. Good. A pause. Then a question, gentler than expected. Do you know who may have done this, ma'am? Deborah stared out the window. The sky was clear, bright blue, the kind Zoe used to draw with blunt crayons. There was a robin on the fence, pecking at the morning stillness like it knew it wouldn't last. I do, she said softly, but I'm not ready to say her name out loud just yet. More silence. This one held something heavier. Cody didn't press. Instead, he said, I understand. She closed her notebook. Then Cody asked, Would you like to file the fraud affidavit today, or take some time to think it over? Deborah didn't answer right away. She set the phone down on speaker, stood slowly, and walked to the fridge. She pulled out the lemon tart, placed it on the table. Then she picked up the phone again, voice calm, clear. Yes, she said, send the paperwork, today. She graduated without debt, because she handed it to me. The mail sat in a thin pile on the counter, most of it junk. Credit card offers, a catalog from a store Deborah hadn't shopped at in years, and a letter from the local alumni association. She wasn't sure why she opened it, only that her hands needed something to do while she waited for the affidavit forms to arrive. Inside was a glossy, trifold brochure, Celebrate Our Graduates, Class of 2021 Success Stories. She froze mid-flip. Zoe's photo stared back at her, full cap and gown, diploma clutched in both hands, tassel swinging slightly to one side. She was smiling wide, bright and assured, as though the future owed her something and had already agreed to pay it. Beneath the photo, the caption read, Zoe Wilson, self-made, first-generation scholar, Bachelor of Arts in Strategic Communication. Magna cum laude, Deborah sat down, the paper crackling in her grip. First-generation scholar, self-made. The insult didn't land like a slap. It landed like a sigh that had nowhere else to go. She'd raised Zoe without help, worked overtime, skipped vacations, dipped into her 401k when the rent got tight and Zoe wanted violin lessons. Deborah had done everything to ensure her daughter wouldn't have to be self-made, and this was how Zoe repaid her, by borrowing her name, her credit, her future, and acting like she'd done it all alone. She looked again at the picture, her daughter's smile now stinging with an unfamiliar edge. It wasn't just pride, it was performance. A quiet tension gathered in Deborah's shoulders. She went to the drawer beneath the coffee maker, the one where old keys and forgotten cords lived. She pulled out a small wooden box, Zoe's box, mementos Deborah hadn't brought herself to throw away, a lanyard from freshman orientation, a folded note from Zoe's first dorm room mate, a worn envelope with "For FAFSA login" scribbled in Zoe's handwriting. Her breath caught. She opened it carefully. Inside were 2 folded sheets, one with a username and password, the other a sticky note. "Don't forget to update for Mom's info. They need it again for the Parent Plus app." Deborah stared at the note like it had grown teeth. She hadn't filled out anything that year, hadn't even been asked. Her chest tightened, not with anger, but with clarity. She remembered Zoe visiting during that semester, charming, light-hearted, asking vague questions about when Deborah's taxes were due, if she still used the same email, if she could borrow the printer, just real quick. All puzzle pieces now. Deborah walked back to her laptop, sat down slowly. She entered the portal address from the note, student.univsouth.edu/login, typed in the username, password, a beat of silence, then the dashboard loaded. Rows of tabs, financial aid, tuition statements, disbursement notices, all under Deborah's name. She clicked financial aid first, 2020 to 2021, school year borrower, Deborah J. Wilson loan, type, parent, plus approved, $19,000, servicer, Collegia. Deborah clicked back, 2019 to 2020, another loan, $17,000, 2018 to 2019, a subsidized gap loan, $6,100. She leaned back slowly in her chair. Zoe hadn't borrowed once. She'd borrowed every year, each time under Deborah's name, quiet, consistent, cumulative. And somehow, it all ended with a photo in a brochure claiming self-made success. Deborah closed the tab. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad for a long moment before she clicked, "Download all records." A zip file formed at the bottom corner of the screen. She renamed it Loan Chain Evidence.zip. Then she looked back at the envelope the sticky note had come in, creased at the edges, still smelling faintly of Zoe's coconut hand lotion. Tucked in the back of the envelope was another scrap of paper. Smaller, faded. It held a second set of credentials, this time for Zoe's university email. Deborah blinked once, then double-clicked the login URL. She forgot to log out. I didn't forget to log in. The login worked on the first try. Deborah stared at the inbox, suddenly flooded with years of unread emails, all tethered to a name that wasn't hers, yet still carried the debt she hadn't chosen. The screen lit up like a confession booth, organized, dated, and utterly unaware that someone new was listening now. Zoe.Wilson@univsouth.edu 1934 emails. The inbox hadn't been touched since graduation. Deborah's fingers hovered over the trackpad, steady despite the tightness in her chest. The email folders were like little trapdoors: financial aid, registrar, reminders, scholarships, receipts. She clicked financial aid first. The messages read like a timeline. Subject, confirmation, FAFSA submission, 2018. Thank you, Zoe, for submitting your FAFSA. Your parent contributor, Deborah Wilson, has been successfully logged and linked. Then another. Subject, plus loan disbursement schedule, 2020. Dear Zoe, your parent plus loan for $19,000 has been approved and scheduled for disbursement. Borrower, Deborah J. Wilson. Deborah scrolled. Every email that mattered carried her name, not Zoe's. She had been the silent character in someone else's story, a faceless figure underwriting a borrowed identity. She clicked into a thread labeled Fall Tuition Urgent. Zoe had emailed her roommate. Zoe, September 1st, 2020. I'm hitting the credit cap again. Can't max my own limit. Just used Mom's again. She never checks the portal. It's fine. Roommate, September 1st. Are you sure? That's sketchy. Like, federally sketchy. Zoe. It's just a signature. She'd help me anyway. I'm just skipping the lecture part. Deborah exhaled hard through her nose. Not anger, clarity. Like a math equation revealing the wrong answer only after you've paid the bill. She clicked into the receipts folder next. PDF after PDF. Digital invoices, loan summaries, monthly notifications she never saw because they never came to her email. One attachment stood out: final tuition receipt, spring 2021, $7,842, paid via disbursement, plus loan, borrower Deborah Wilson. And yet, just 4 weeks later, Zoe had posted online about being completely debt-free as a first-gen success story. Deborah sat back for a moment. Her hands were cold, despite the warmth creeping in from the window. Outside, the birds chirped as if the world were still kind. But inside her, something had shifted. Trust had always been a door. This was the sound of it closing. She clicked back to the inbox, searched the term mom, dozens of hits, a few scattered birthday e-cards, one forwarded link to a Mother's Day brunch ad, nothing that mattered. Then another thread jumped out. Subject: emergency form update. Need ASAP from Zoe to self-date, January 14, 2021. It was a forwarded scan of Deborah's driver's license, her social, even her signature clipped from a scanned W-2. Deborah's breath caught. She opened the attachments one by one, downloading them to a new folder on her desktop. Each click felt heavier than the last: a fingerprint, a trail, a digital mosaic of theft wearing the mask of family. She minimized the email window and opened her file manager. New folder, Fraud Evidence 1. She dragged the PDFs inside, then the FAFSA confirmations, then the receipts, then the roommate thread. One by one, truth moved into the folder, and it was hers now. She opened a blank document and began a log. Exhibit A, loan confirmation, 2018. Exhibit B, plus disbursement, 2020. Exhibit C, roommate email thread. Exhibit D, driver's license, scan. It read like a case file, because it was one. Just as she saved the document, a new email pinged into Zoe's inbox. Still connected. Subject: outstanding payment reminder. From Collegia Servicing Group. Dear Deborah, your payment is 12 days overdue. Deborah stared at the Dear Deborah with eyes that no longer flinched. Then, with quiet finality, she hit forward. Recipient: deborah.wilson.legal@gmail.com. Subject: beginning the record. She didn't need Zoe to admit anything. The inbox already had. She bought balloons. I inherited debt. Deborah had never liked champagne. Too sharp, too showy. But there it was, sparkling in every photo. Tilted glasses, open mouths, flashes of gold confetti bursting in air-conditioned hotel rooms. Zoe had turned 21 in style. The photos were still up on her public profile. Deborah hadn't meant to find them. She was trying to locate an old contact buried in Zoe's messages. But the search bar suggested something else. Zoe 21st birthday. She clicked. And there it was. A full album of curated chaos. Girls in tight dresses, rooftop views, pink and silver balloons spelling out Boss Babe 21. One of them held a mini chalkboard that read, debt-free and dangerous. Deborah stared at it for a long moment, then opened her notebook. October 2020, Zoe's 21st birthday trip, Champagne, rooftop suite, flights, debt-free claim, photo caption, my name's still on the loan, late fee posted, $118.94. She flipped back to the downloaded files from the university portal. Sure enough, the payment due. October 8th had never been made. A system-generated note marked the account as delinquent and added a charge to Deborah's account. That same week, Zoe had been photographed holding a $300 designer clutch in one hand and a flute of Dom Perignon in the other. The caption read, "She remembered to pour into herself." Deborah leaned back in her chair, the old wooden frame creaking beneath her. For years, she'd made her own birthday cake, scrimped through the holidays, wore the same black blazer to every interview, and when Zoe said she couldn't afford books or bus passes, Deborah always came through, quietly, unquestioningly. Now she knew why the phone had stayed silent that month. There was no space left in Zoe's version of the story for the woman underwriting it all. Deborah clicked into the Collegia servicing portal again. Her login still worked. The layout hadn't changed. Balances in bold, due dates in red, her name at the top like a warning label. She navigated to loan details. A drop-down menu appeared, View Transaction History. She hesitated just for a moment, then clicked. The page unfolded like a spreadsheet of betrayal. Every charge, every missed payment, every penalty, reissued letter, and interest adjustment. The months when Zoe had been struggling aligned perfectly with luxury posts, spa days, brunch photos, a tagged image in front of a Vegas marquee. October 2020, unpaid. November 2020, paid minimum. December 2020, no payment again, another fee. Deborah began copying line items into a new document titled Fraud Evidence 2, Transaction Log. Her eyes didn't water. They narrowed. This wasn't just irresponsibility, it was strategy. Zoe hadn't been buried by the system, she'd navigated around it, using Deborah as the bridge. The printer behind her whirred to life. She'd forgotten she sent a page. The sheet slid out. Loan balance now over $44,792.37. Late fees and interest still climbing. She picked it up and stared at the total, then looked again at the birthday photo of Zoe blowing out candles on a tiered cake shaped like a Louis Vuitton purse. "She bought balloons," Deborah whispered. "I inherited the bill." She moved her mouse back to the portal, scrolled to the bottom, clicked Request Full Transaction History, PDF. A message box popped up. Request will be emailed to the primary borrower within 24 hours. She clicked Confirm, then folded the birthday photo printout in half and slid it into the growing folder labeled The Cost of Silence. She posted about her second mom. I checked my mail again. Empty. Deborah stood at the mailbox in her slippers, robe cinched tight against the soft Georgia morning, fingers curled in expectation around the cold steel handle. Mother's Day. The one day a year when obligation turned into postage, usually something small from Zoe. A card. A candle. Last year it was a mug that read World's Okayest Mom. She'd laughed at the time. Now it felt like foreshadowing. The metal creaked as she opened the box. Empty. She leaned in anyway, double-checking, the way one does when hope won't quite admit defeat. No card, no note, just a coupon from a local pet store addressed to resident, not even her name. She closed the box slowly, stood there a moment, listening to the wind rustle through the budding maple trees. A mockingbird chirped nearby, its song too cheerful, too rehearsed. Inside, she poured coffee she didn't want and scrolled through her phone, thumbing through the news, recipe suggestions, and family updates she no longer clicked on. Finally, she opened Instagram. Habit, not hope. And there it was. Zoe's latest post. A full-color photo of Zoe wrapped in a cozy embrace with a tall, smiling woman in a rose cardigan, gray-streaked hair pulled into a bun, laugh lines crinkling around her kind eyes. The caption read, "Happy Mother's Day to the woman who raised me with love and no judgment. Thank you for always seeing me, even when I couldn't see myself. Second mom, Chakra chosen family, Michaelman ungrateful." Deborah's thumb froze on the screen. Second mom. She blinked once, twice. Not out of pain. She was past that. This was something colder, a tightening, a quiet severing. She enlarged the photo. The woman was Zoe's college roommate's mother, Patricia, if Deborah remembered right. They'd met briefly during one of Zoe's campus move-outs. Patricia had brought sandwiches and flowers and helped carry boxes, while Deborah stood in the Georgia heat, ignored, holding a trash bag of laundry Zoe had forgotten to wash. Deborah stared at the screen until her coffee went cold again. She set the mug down, carefully, soundlessly, and walked into her and study. There, she opened her laptop and navigated to the folder labeled The Cost of Silence. The files were multiplying. Tuition receipts, forged documents, emails, screenshots. She dragged Zoe's post into a new folder and labeled it emotionaltheft.jpg. It wasn't the financial betrayal that stung in that moment. It was the revision of history, the erasure, the audacity of curated gratitude. Zoe hadn't just stolen her credit, she'd reassigned her role. Deborah sat down and reopened the transaction log request from the day before. Still pending. She clicked refresh. Nothing yet. Back to Instagram. In the comments under the post, hearts and affirmations poured in. Glowgirl98. This made me cry, you deserve all the love. Yas, Queen. Chosen family is the real family. Patricia Sunlight, I love you like my own. Deborah felt the heat rising in her chest. Then stop. Not rage, resolve. She switched tabs and began typing a short memo in her evidence tracker. Exhibit E, social media narrative contradiction, photo posted May 9, 2021, caption, second mom, implication, emotional disassociation from legal and financial primary guardian, purpose, rewriting of personal story to conceal financial deception. She saved the document, dragged it to the folder, backed everything up to a separate drive. Then she stood, crossed to the kitchen, and opened the cabinet where she stored stationery. Blank cards, most unused. One at the very back still had the post-it Zoe had stuck to it years ago. Just in case I forget. Deborah closed the cabinet. No, she thought. You didn't forget. You just replaced. The next morning, the full transaction log landed in her inbox. She clicked download. The file name read, Collegia Account Activity D, Wilson 2018 to 2021.pdf, and in the background, Zoe's post kept gaining likes. She stole points I took 40 years to build. The number hit her like a punch to the ribs. Credit score, 642. Status, needs improvement. Deborah stared at the app's dashboard, her thumb frozen above the screen. She refreshed it. Twice. Still the same number, down 114 points from the last time she'd checked. 40 years of careful payments, of saying no when she wanted to say yes, of sitting at kitchen tables with yellow legal pads and calculators instead of nights out or shopping sprees. She'd built her credit like a fortress, slowly, brick by brick, and Zoe had walked right in with a borrowed key and knocked it down from the inside. She scrolled down the report. The cause wasn't a mystery. The loan had gone delinquent. 3 missed payments in the last 6 months. Total balance unchanged, interest accrued, and all of it sitting squarely under her name. A soft knock at the door broke the silence. Her neighbor, Mr. Watkins, waving from his porch across the street, motioning toward the driveway. "Your car's got a tag hanging," he called. Deborah stepped out and saw the envelope tucked under her windshield. She walked over, peeled it off. Inside was a notice from the dealership. Refinance denied, based on current credit rating. Her hands tightened around the paper. The denial wasn't the worst part. It was the assumption written between the lines, that she was the one who'd been careless, irresponsible, that she had somehow fallen behind. Back inside, she placed the letter next to the growing stack in her office. Every one of them had her name on it, everyone written in a tone that assumed guilt. But guilt wasn't hers. She opened her laptop and logged back into her file archive. The folders were there. Fraud Evidence 1. Loan Chain. Evidence, the Cost of Silence. She opened a new one and labeled it, Credit Damage Impact Report. Deborah had never been someone who sued lightly. She didn't speak in ultimatums, didn't raise her voice, didn't believe in destroying bridges until the other person built the fire. But this wasn't personal anymore. It was structural. She searched for a lawyer specializing in identity theft, scanned a few profiles before settling on one, Elaine Harrow, consumer protection attorney, Atlanta. The reviews were sharp and precise. Words like relentless, detail-oriented, no nonsense. Deborah clicked schedule a consultation. 30 minutes later, she was speaking to Elaine over video. Her screen split between legal forms and Deborah's quiet kitchen in the background. Elaine listened, nodding occasionally, asking short, clear questions. "And you didn't sign or authorize any of the loan applications?" "No," Deborah said, "not one." "You've downloaded proof of the forged application, IP discrepancy, and usage of your credentials?" "Yes." "Good," Elaine said. "Then the next step is simple. You'll fill out a formal affidavit of identity theft, which we'll submit to the Department of Education's Fraud Division and the loan servicer. That will trigger an investigation and pause all further damage." Deborah's eyes didn't waver from the screen. "How long will it take?" 6 weeks minimum, but we'll attach the credit report changes as Supporting evidence, the 114-point drop is key. They'll have to acknowledge that. Elaine forwarded the affidavit template. Deborah opened it immediately. Affidavit of identity theft, name of victim, Deborah J. Wilson. Date of discovery, May 10th, 2021. Summary of unauthorized activity. Use of personal information to acquire federal student loans totaling $42,107 without consent. She typed with sharp, deliberate strokes, not frantic, focused. Each word laid a stone in the path forward. At the bottom of the form, just before the signature line, there was a prompt. Do you know the individual responsible for the unauthorized activity? Deborah hovered over the field. Then slowly she typed 5 letters. ZOE. She didn't call for Mother's Day, but she picked up when the truth rang out. The phone rang twice before Zoe answered. Not because she expected a call, certainly not from Deborah, but because unknown numbers sometimes meant opportunity or consequences. She'd stopped being able to tell which was which. Hello? She said, voice bright, suspicious. It's me, Deborah said. Silence. Zoe didn't answer right away. Not with words. Deborah could hear ambient noise in the background, a coffee grinder, faint music, a laugh that wasn't hers, public, safe. Of course she'd take the call somewhere she could pretend it didn't matter. Oh, Zoe said finally, hesitant. Hey, Mom, I didn't recognize the number. I thought maybe you didn't recognize mine anymore either. Zoe laughed, awkward. I've just been busy. Things have been kind of crazy lately. Deborah's tone didn't rise or fall. I figured. There was a pause. The kind that stretches too long and makes even strangers uncomfortable. Zoe filled it. So, what's up? Everything okay? No, Deborah said simply. Everything's not okay. The background noise faded. Zoe had moved away from the crowd. Deborah pictured her ducking into a hallway, cupping the phone to her ear like that would shield her from accountability. What do you mean? Zoe asked. I mean, Deborah continued, that I've seen the loan documents, the ones you signed using my name, my social, the ones you forged so you could go to school without paying for it. Zoe was quiet. I also saw the email thread with your roommate, Deborah added, and the FAFSA logins, and the receipts that were emailed to your university account, the one you forgot to log out of. Zoe's voice dropped. Okay, wait, Mom? No, Deborah interrupted, calm but cutting. Don't spin it. I'm not calling to argue, Zoe. I'm calling because the lender asked if I knew who stole my identity. You make it sound like I'm some stranger, Zoe snapped, panic leaking through her tone now. I'm your daughter. You used that fact to access credit I didn't offer, Deborah said. That's not a daughter. That's a thief with my last name. Zoe scoffed. Come on, you knew. You had to know. I left hints. You saw my tuition bills come through. No, Zoe. I saw you walk across a graduation stage with a smug little smile and a caption that said, self-made. I saw you call someone else your second mother while sending your debt to the one who raised you. You're overreacting. No, Deborah said quietly. I'm responding. There's a difference. Zoe exhaled hard. I was gonna pay it back. I meant to. I didn't think you'd find out like this. You mean you were hoping I wouldn't? Deborah corrected. And if you really meant to pay it back, you would have started by telling me the truth. The silence on the other end shifted. Now it was fear. I'm sorry, Zoe said. But it landed limp, unsteady. Deborah didn't reply. Instead, she reached for the legal envelope on her kitchen table, the one with Elaine Harrow's return address stamped in navy ink. The affidavit has been filed, she said. All loan payments are frozen pending the investigation. My credit report is already under review. Zoe's breath hitched. You filed a report? Yes, Deborah said. And the lender will be in touch. You'll likely be contacted by both Collegia and the Department of Education's Fraud Division. You should prepare documentation. They'll want to hear your side. You're actually going through with this? I already have. Zoe went quiet again. For once, nothing clever or defensive came next. Deborah stood and walked to the window. Outside, her neighbor's children were playing with sidewalk chalk. Yellow suns, purple stick figures, a bright blue house with hearts on the roof. She hadn't raised Zoe to steal, but she had raised her to believe her actions had weight. It was time she felt it. Zoe's voice came back, smaller now. "Mom, what happens next?" Deborah's grip on the phone tightened, but her voice never wavered. "What happens next," she said, "is not up to me anymore. Love doesn't mean liability." The confirmation email came in at 9:16 a.m. Subject, affidavit received. Case ID 01489 FRAUD status. Under review. All collection activities suspended. Deborah stared at the message, then let her hands fall to her lap. The world didn't shift. No thunder, no applause, just the soft hum of her fridge in the background and the creak of the chair beneath her. But she knew. Something had moved. Her name had been pulled off autopay, her credit report flagged for fraud investigation. And somewhere, in the shadowy database of Collegia Servicing Group, her identity had stopped bleeding. She exhaled, slow and full, and reached for her cup of tea. The moment was quiet, but not peaceful. 10 minutes later, her phone buzzed. Zoe, missed call, 1. Then a second, this time a voicemail. She didn't listen. Instead, she opened her news tab, typing in, "Graduation record, verification plus flagged status." She knew the system well enough to guess what might happen next. A flagged Parent Plus loan didn't just pause billing, it triggered audits. Records held under dispute were pulled from federal verification. Degree audits could be reopened, financial aid forms reviewed, and that meant Zoe, once invisible behind her self-made facade, was now visible again. Very visible. The doorbell rang. Deborah walked to the front window and peered through the curtain. No one. But a delivery envelope lay on her porch. She opened the door and retrieved it. Express mail from her lawyer, Elaine. Inside was a printed summary of what had been filed, the affidavit, the attached exhibits, and the official document from Collegia, effective immediately, account status changed to fraud review, borrower identity under investigation. All repayments halted pending resolution. At the bottom, a line was highlighted. Loan holder flagged for potential misuse of federal funds. Educational institution may be notified. Deborah folded the letter slowly, sliding it into her case binder. The next ping came from Zoe's end again. "Zoe, why didn't you tell me you were really doing this?" Zoe, "My advisor said there's a hold on my records." Zoe, "They won't release my transcripts." Zoe, "This could ruin everything." Deborah placed the phone face down. She walked into the kitchen and sliced into an apple, clean, methodical strokes. The knife against the cutting board gave a rhythm to the silence, something grounding. Her decision was already made. It wasn't about punishment, it was about consequence. She'd spent her whole life making sure Zoe never hit the ground, patching holes, covering debts, forgiving the unspoken. But there was a difference between support and submission. And somewhere along the way, Zoe had mistaken her love for a blank check. Now the overdraft notice had arrived. Her phone buzzed again. This time she flipped it. "Zoe, you're blowing this out of proportion." Deborah stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, "Deborah, I kept quiet for years. This is me speaking clearly." She didn't wait for a reply. Instead, she opened a fresh email draft to Elaine. Subject, next steps. She hovered over the body of the message, then typed, "If they flagged her records, the school may reach out. I'll prepare a statement, and I'm ready to testify if needed." She hit send. Outside, the sun had shifted, cutting across the dining table. The light didn't make her feel warm. It made her feel seen. "I never wanted revenge, just receipts." It started with a letterhead, thick paper, clean font. The logo in the top left corner read, "Bensley and Rothwell Communications, Zoe's employer." Deborah unfolded the envelope slowly. No salutation, just a direct request. "Dear Ms. Wilson, as part of our internal records verification process, we are reaching out to confirm academic and financial disclosures made during onboarding by one Zoe Wilson. Specifically, we are seeking confirmation of parent plus loan responsibility, clarity on current borrower status, verification of claims related to financial independence during education. Please respond at your earliest convenience. Deborah set the letter down, flat on her desk. Her hands didn't tremble. They folded. So this was it, the slow shift from private hurt to public consequence. The affidavit had passed through the lender. Collegia had initiated their fraud review and shared results with the Department of Education. The university had been notified. And now, the ripple had reached Zoe's career. This wasn't vengeance, it was a paper trail. And for the first time, someone besides Deborah was following it. She glanced at her phone, another unread message from Zoe. The preview was a blur of blame and panic. They're calling it misconduct, do something. But Deborah didn't reach for the phone. She reached for the folder marked Employer Communications. Just yesterday, she'd created it with no real expectation it would fill so soon. She scanned the HR letter again. They weren't accusing Zoe of fraud, not directly, but they were asking questions she couldn't dodge with a caption or charm. They were looking for receipts. Deborah pulled out a printed copy of her affidavit and a summary page from the Department of Education's fraud unit, both clearly identifying Hay as the primary borrower and filing party. She highlighted the relevant lines. Borrower, Deborah J. Wilson, unauthorized claimant, has submitted full documentation. Investigation active. She placed them side by side with the HR request and opened her laptop. The cursor blinked at the top of the email window. 2. HR at BRCGLOBALDOTCOM subject. Response to employment record inquiry. Zoe Wilson, Dear Bensley and Rothwell Communications. This message is in response to your inquiry regarding Zoe Wilson's educational financing and stated financial independence. The Parent Plus loans referenced in her application were applied for without my knowledge or consent. I am the named borrower, but not a willing participant in those loans. Fraud documentation has been submitted to the Department of Education and Collegia Servicing Group, and an active investigation is underway. Attached are scanned documents verifying this status, including the filed affidavit and case ID from the federal loan servicer. I confirm that Zoe Wilson's statements of self-funding and financial independence during her academic years are inaccurate and currently under legal review. Sincerely, Deborah J. Wilson. She reread it twice, each sentence sharper than the last, not cruel, just clear. She attached the documents, hit send, and watched the progress bar crawl to completion. Outside, rain had started. Soft, persistent, tapping against the windows like a metronome marking time. There was a part of her that wanted to feel guilt. But guilt was born from action. What she felt now was response. She had not built this spiral. She'd only stopped standing under it. By mid-afternoon, her phone buzzed again. An unfamiliar email address popped up on the lock screen. z.wilson@brcglobal.com. Subject URGENT. Please respond. Deborah opened it. No greeting. They're asking for written clarification. I'm about to be put on probation. Are you trying to ruin my life? She closed the message without replying. Instead, she went to her file drawer and pulled out a photo, Zoe at 16, holding up her first paycheck. Eyes wide, proud, hopeful. A version of her who hadn't learned to hide theft behind ambition. Deborah placed the photo in a new envelope and wrote one word across the front. Accountability. An alert dinged. New email, Human Resources, Bensley and Rothwell. Subject, final confirmation needed, parental loan verification, @TN, Deborah J. Wilson. She opened it. At the bottom, a single line awaited her response. Can you confirm the signature on file was yours? Deborah reached for her pen. She earned the grades, but I paid the price. The subject line was clinical. Subject, Notice of Internal Financial Review, South Atlantic University. Deborah opened the email slowly, already knowing what it would say before the words formed on the screen. She'd spent weeks building a file that read like a timeline of betrayal. Now, finally, the institution that had handed Zoe her diploma was catching up. The message came from the Office of Student Financial Integrity. Director. Measured. Dear Ms. Wilson, You are receiving this notice as the listed borrower on federal Parent Plus loans associated with Zoe Wilson. South Atlantic University has been notified of a federal fraud investigation into the legitimacy of the associated FAFSA applications and student aid records. In accordance with policy, an internal investigation has been opened. Student Zoe Wilson has been asked to submit documentation to verify identity, financial disclosures, and original consent records. We appreciate your cooperation and may follow up for further statements. Deborah let out a long, slow breath. It wasn't relief. It wasn't satisfaction. It was something quieter, like the feeling of turning off an engine that had been idling too long. She clicked print, watching the machine spit the paper out in clean black text. Across the page, her name and Zoe's sat side by side again, like a headline she hadn't written but couldn't ignore. She remembered the day Zoe got her acceptance letter. They'd stood at the kitchen counter, both barefoot, both holding the envelope like it might burn them. Zoe screamed. Deborah cried. They made spaghetti from a box and danced in their pajamas. Now that same school was tracing fraud through signatures and timestamps. Through logins Zoe had hoped would remain buried. Outside, the sun broke through a passing cloud. It streamed across the wood floor, warm against Deborah's feet, as the weight of borrowed silence finally started to lift. She placed the printed letter into her binder, behind the tab labeled Institutional Contact. Beside it, she added a new page. Internal Review Timeline. South Atlantic University, notified via lender flag, investigation opened, Zoe requested to verify. Identity, financial disclosures, consent documentation beneath it, Deborah wrote, "She earned the grades, but I paid the price, not just in money, in time, in credit, in trust, in self. The price had not been tuition. The price was every moment she'd been gaslit into silence." A ping echoed from her laptop. Another email. From Zoe Wilson. Subject: What did you do? Deborah didn't open it. Instead, she picked up the framed photo beside her desk. Zoe at her high school graduation, grinning ear to ear, cap tassel crooked, cheeks round with youth and promise. Back then, she'd believed in clean slates. Now she believed in clean records. Another ping. New sender. From legal.affairs@univsouth.edu. Subject: Request for statement, parental loan authorization. Her fingers hovered above the mouse, then clicked. The message was short, less formal, more personal. Ms. Wilson, in light of recent documentation provided to the Department of Education and our Financial Aid Office, we would appreciate a direct statement regarding your knowledge of and consent to the loans issued under your name. Due to the nature of the findings, we are escalating to our legal review team. This may impact both financial responsibility and student record standing. Please reply at your earliest convenience. University Legal Affairs. The cursor blinked in the reply box. Deborah didn't begin typing. Not yet. Instead, she walked to the window. The neighbor's wind chimes stirred softly in the breeze. Somewhere down the block, a lawnmower started. The world, unaware, kept moving. But inside this house, a reckoning had arrived. Not loud, but firm, documented. She returned to the laptop and clicked Save as Draft. She wanted the timing to be exact, like the rest of her file, like her memory. Then her phone lit up again. This time, a new number. Area code, the university's legal district. She answered. "This is Deborah Wilson." The voice on the line said, "We're requesting your confirmation on record." She asked if I'd drop it. I said, "Only the interest." The offer came wrapped in legalese, but the meaning was simple. Collegia Servicing Group had concluded their review. The Department of Education signed off. And now, after 3 months of file exchanges, affidavits, and awkward calls, Deborah opened the letter that would redraw the lines. Subject: Resolution Proposal. Case ID 01489 FRAUD. Summary: Borrower identity confirmed as compromised. Deborah J. Wilson cleared of all repayment responsibility. Full loan transferred to Zoe Wilson as sole obliger. Settlement reduced by 22% if repaid within 18 months. Deborah's credit to be fully restored. She read it twice, then a third time. The language was sterile, cold, but beneath it pulsed something warmer. Freedom. And yet, she didn't smile. Not immediately. Instead, she placed the letter beside her original affidavit, the photo of the forged signature, the folder labeled "The Cost of Silence." This wasn't a celebration, it was a correction. She called Elaine, her attorney, before responding. The woman answered on the first ring. "It's clean," Elaine confirmed. "Better than I expected. You're fully absolved. And Zoe? She'll have to decide what to do with her part," Elaine said, "but the system finally recognizes it isn't yours." Deborah nodded. "Then we move forward. Do you want to destroy the evidence now that it's over?" Deborah looked at the drawer where she kept the records, neatly organized, dated, cross-referenced like a case file. She could have deleted the folders, burned the paper, closed the door. "No," she said. "We don't erase things just because they're inconvenient. That's how this started." Elaine didn't press. "Understood." They ended the call. Deborah poured herself a glass of iced tea and sat on the back porch. The afternoon was soft, still. Wind chimes moved like distant bells. It should have felt like justice. Instead, it felt like release, a quiet letting go of something she never asked to carry. Her phone buzzed. "Zoe." This time she answered. "I heard," Zoe said without greeting. Her voice sounded smaller, raspier, like she'd been crying or yelling at someone else before calling her. "I assume Collegia notified you?" "They did," Zoe said. "It's in my name now." Deborah waited. "I don't know how I'm supposed to pay this," Zoe added. "I don't even qualify for the reduced settlement. I don't have that kind of money." "You should have thought of that when you borrowed mine," Deborah replied, steady. Zoe exhaled sharply. "Can you just drop it now, please? What's the point of continuing to punish me?" Deborah didn't raise her voice. "I didn't ask for punishment. I asked for accountability. You forged my name. You stole my credit. I lived with that fallout for years. You've lived with it for 3 months." "I said I was sorry." "And I said I didn't need an apology," Deborah replied. "I needed you to stop pretending it wasn't real." There was a beat of silence. Zoe's next words came hesitantly. "Are you ever going to forgive me?" Deborah's grip on the glass tightened. She watched a single condensation bead run down the side. "I already did," she said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean I forget what happened. It just means I won't let it define me." "So, what now?" Zoe asked. "I dropped the interest," Deborah said flatly. "That's more than the bank would have done." She ended the call without waiting for more. No rage, no parting words. Just enough. Inside, she walked to her file cabinet and opened a folder labeled Estate Planning. She hadn't updated it in 3 years. She pulled out the section marked Financial Power of Attorney. Zoe's name was listed there, bold, naive, automatic. She crossed it out, printed a new form. At the bottom, where it asked for Designated Representative, she left it blank, not out of bitterness, but because trust, like debt, had to be earned, not inherited. She sent cards to mentors. I sent instructions to the bank. The envelope was pink, sealed with a gold sticker that said, "Thank you for being you." Deborah found it on her doorstep. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. She opened it slowly, the paper warm from the sun, the ink trying too hard to look personal. Inside was a Hallmark card printed with watercolor daisies and a message in cursive. "Some people guide us. Some people shape us. Some people save us. You were all 3. But it wasn't addressed to her. Tucked inside was a second card, signed in Zoe's handwriting. "Dear Patricia, thank you for everything you've done for me this year. You were there in ways I didn't expect, and more than I ever deserved. You've been a mentor, a mother, and a light I didn't know I needed. Love, Zoe Star Patricia, the second mom." Again. Deborah sat down at her kitchen table. The card curled slightly at the edges, still faintly scented with lavender and something synthetic. It was delicate, careful, and deliberate in its exclusion. No card for her, not even a copied message. just the silence of someone who'd decided her story sounded cleaner without the woman who made it possible. She didn't cry. Instead, she opened her laptop, clicked into her bank account, and hovered over the account titled Zoe Tuition Fund. Years ago, she'd built it slowly. Bonuses, tax returns, and skipped vacations, all saved in case Zoe needed to go further than she ever could. Deborah moved the cursor to Close Account. The pop-up asked for confirmation. "Are you sure you want to permanently close this savings fund?" She clicked yes, then opened a new account and named it Wilson Restart Grant, Women Over 40, Scholarship Fund. Purpose: supporting second chapters, not second chances. She transferred the full balance. The number blinked once. Clean, certain. The only message she received from Zoe that week came via email. Subject: hope you're well. No punctuation, no greeting. I know I haven't handled things the right way. I just didn't want to make things worse by saying the wrong thing. I wish we could go back and talk when this wasn't so heavy. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I still think about you. Hope life's been okay. It was the kind of apology that avoids specifics. The kind meant to soothe without cost. Deborah read it once, then deleted it. No reply. No forwarding. No printout for her files. Some silences deserve preservation. 2 days later, a formal envelope arrived from South Atlantic University. She slid it open with a butter knife, careful and clean. It was an invitation. Mother-daughter brunch. A celebration of legacy, mentorship, and milestone. You are receiving this invitation as a guest. Your name was not submitted by a graduating participant, but you may attend as a general community member. Panelists include Zoe Wilson, Patricia Grant, and other distinguished guests. Her name, Deborah J. Wilson, wasn't printed anywhere except the mailing label. She placed the invitation next to the closed laptop. Outside, birds called from the oak trees and a breeze slipped through the cracked kitchen window. The scent of rain mixed with old coffee. She stood for a moment, thinking about the dresses she used to help Zoe pick for school dances, the ones she'd pressed, the hems she'd stitched by hand. She walked to her cabinet and pulled down a porcelain box marked Correspondence. Inside were birthday cards she never sent, a baby tooth taped to an index card, a postcard from Zoe's first dorm. She added the brunch invitation, closed the lid, and on her laptop, the RSVP window still waited. 2 buttons, accept or decline. She hovered over both, then closed the tab. She forged mine for debt. I signed mine for peace. It began, as so many things did lately, with a line and a name. Signature of applicant, Deborah J. Wilson. Her hand didn't shake. The pen moved smoothly, like it had been waiting for this page. She was sitting in the county clerk's office at a corner table reserved for legal declarations. Clean surfaces, beige walls, the faint scent of paper and antiseptic. There was no ceremony, no witness, no daughter by her side. But that signature? It belonged to her. Finally. The form was straightforward. A notarized statement confirming the revision of her estate plan, power of attorney assignments, and digital asset access. She'd worked with Elaine to ensure every document tied to her name could no longer be ghostwritten by someone else. Her accounts were locked, her records encrypted. The trust she'd once handed out freely was now something earned, not assumed. When the notary returned with her stamped seal, Deborah slid the file back into her leather binder and stood. It was done. She walked 2 blocks to her bank, the spring air cool against her cheeks. Light wind rustled through the trees overhead, leaves brushing together like whispers. She stepped inside the branch lobby and approached the front desk. "Ms. Wilson?" the teller said, smiling. "We've set everything up as requested." Deborah nodded. "And the donation?" The woman tapped a few keys. "Confirmed. $10,000 to the Identity Restoration and Protection Fund, under your name only. Would you like a formal letter of acknowledgement?" "Yes," Deborah said, "and I want it mailed." "To the recipient?" She paused. "Number to me." As she signed the donation receipt, the irony wasn't lost on her. Her name, so easily stolen, stretched, reshaped, was now printed at the bottom of a fund that would help others rebuild what had been taken. She stepped outside with her copy and folded it neatly into her bag. The sun had begun to shift westward. Shadows grew long on the sidewalk, and in their movement she saw something unexpected. Relief. At home, she moved through her evening rhythm without hurry. She fed the cat, brewed tea, washed the same mug she used every morning. Then she sat at the dining table and opened her laptop for the final time that day. No new messages, no apologies, no asks, just silence and ownership. She opened a new document and titled it simply, "To myself, not to Zoe. Not to anyone watching, just her." She stared at the blank page for a long time before writing. "I spent years letting people shape the story with my name on the line. They borrowed my patience, my money, my silence. But today, I took it back. I signed my own forms. I moved my own money. I closed doors no one thought I would, not out of anger, out of clarity. I am not a liability. I am not a backup plan. I am not a placeholder. I am a woman who knows what her name is worth." She saved the document, then closed the lid. The house was still. She lit a single candle on the table. White lavender. The same scent Zoe once gave her in a holiday gift bag, years before things got complicated. The flame flickered, casting soft shadows against the edges of the room. She sat there for a moment, hands in her lap, breathing deeply. Then she reached for a pen and a fresh sheet of stationery, the nice kind she reserved for things that mattered, not for confrontation, not for memory, for permanence, and she signed it. One more time, not for banks, not for courts, for herself. She used my name. I reclaimed it.